Good afternoon, everybody. This is David Perlmutter from Quantum Listing, and we are here today with Brendan Hotchkiss of Levitt Digital, and he and I are going to talk about the new paradigm of commercial real estate tech cooperation. Dick Long may be the godfather of CRE Tech, but Brendan, I think, is the godfather of CRE Tech Cooperation. So I'm very excited to hear what he has to say to us, and I will kick it off by saying hello, Brendan.
Thank you for having me, David.
Welcome.
Pleasure to be on.
I am glad. I've enjoyed every single one of our conversations, maybe because we haven't talked about religion or politics, but maybe we agree on that also. So you were kind enough to send me a bio, which, if you'll indulge me, I will read to the assembled masses. Brendan was born and raised in Chicago. He was interested in joining the Marines out of high school, but at the urging of his parents, attended John Carroll University in Cleveland, Ohio, where he accepted a ROTC scholarship through the U.S. Army. Brendan's plan was to be an Army Ranger. During his junior year in college, he tore his right ACL. I can relate to that. After a few repair surgeries to his knee, the surgeons advised Brendan and the Army if Brendan were to continue his path within the Army, it was almost a certainty he encountered the need for multiple more knee surgeries. This led to a medical discharge and Brendan returning to Chicago to earn his real estate MBA at Roosevelt University and start his career in commercial real estate. Brendan's father is a trader and his mother is a third-generation real estate broker, along with her 3 brothers and multiple cousins. Being exposed to real estate deals, and seeing large-scale models of commercial developments at an early age shaped Brendan's passion to pursue a career in commercial real estate. Brendan began his career at Marcus and Millichap. He focused on office and industrial investment sales throughout the Midwest. After a few years, Brendan was recruited to a boutique private equity firm that concentrated in commercial real estate. Here, Brendan became more involved in debt equity structuring. Brendan left this firm and opened the Chicago office for Johnson Capital, now Walker and Dunlop. At Johnson Capital, he originated approximately $750 million in debt and equity deals. Within months, the finance markets were upside down. That was not his doing. And traditional deals were stuck as no debt and equity was moving, 2008, 2009. Realizing it may be a few years till the market returned to traditional debt equity deals, Brendan set out to form Levitt Capital and focus in the distressed markets. Levitt Capital is a boutique real estate investment banking firm. It was formed in the recession to assist banks in the sale and restructuring of $4 billion in real estate debt. Levitt Capital also works with middle market borrowers in restructuring and or buying out their existing debt obligations. As the market corrected itself, Levitt Capital evolved into working traditional real estate transactions through arranging debt and equity for middle market real estate firms. In 2015, Brendan and his partner Doug Macy saw an opportunity to create a free commercial real estate marketplace known as Levitt Digital, LDCRE.com. Today, LDCRE works with 6,000 brokerage firms. It hosts listings from 10,000 markets across 34 countries. LDCRE is continually learning from its users every day about how to make its platform more efficient. LDCRE will continue to upgrade and expand its platform while introducing additional services to assist users in saving time and being more successful, which is what it's all about. Thank you. All right. So,
Thank you for the intro.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that with us. I learned a lot in reading it. 3 generations of real estate. That's pretty impressive. We were grocers in my family, so uh,
Yeah, it's one of those things you sort of fall into.
yeah,
So honestly, I didn't really know about many other industries when I first got out of college, so it was easy to gravitate more into the real estate markets.
interesting. And your dreams of being a ranger were dashed. Do you use any of the skills that you acquired while starting that training in your real estate?
Yeah, I mean, so I was weeded out through the medical discharge before being commissioned as an officer. But, start doing the ROTC program in college taught me a few things. One, working out regularly, I think is a great tool to improve your mind and focus. But two, there's no excuses. You always have to be organized and prepared. And I remember the first few weeks when I wasn't really conforming well to the program. It was met with a little bit of harshness from the sergeants that were running it. So you learn quickly to adapt and wake up early and be organized and give it 100%. And I think that carried over into how I perform in business.
Well, I can tell you from my experience in working with you that you are definitely a very organized, prepared individual. So you made my life
Thank you.
a little
That's
bit
kind,
easier.
David.
Thanks. So
Thank you.
you started in commercial real estate about 18 years ago in 2001. Uh,
Yep.
what have you seen change in commercial real estate since you started?
It's funny. A lot of it's the same, but a lot of it's very different. In '01, email came out in the mid '90s, but still just hadn't really picked up much in the professional realm. So I remember in '01, communicating through email was still pretty new. Not everyone had it. So when we would have new listings, we would spend a fortune on going to the printer and printing out packages, postcards, even faxing things to people like new listings. And no one had Blackberries even yet. So your opportunity to catch people was either on their home phone or their work phone. It was a very unconnected world back then. And I think partially this may be just my opinion, but I think that there's a lot of truth to it. Being so unconnected, I think that there was a lot less cooperation between brokers. I mean, LoopNet was around, but it was not nearly as prevalent as it is today. Costar was around back then, but I think that there was a small percentage of the brokerage market that really turned to that online listing out of fear that, they're sharing something that could be taken away from them from other brokers.
That is true. I mean, when I first started, I just started a few years before you, I guess in 1986. Fax machines were a novelty back then. I remember everybody in the office like sitting around in awe as this magic machine printed out a letter from someplace else. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Uh, and the uh, what tech do you see people using? I mean, at Marcus and Millichap, were you seeing a lot of tech there? Or
Yes and no. So still to this day, and now I'm on the outside looking in, I still have a number of close friends there that are pretty high up in the pecking order since they've been there since I was there in '01, and some of them before that. But at the time they had what's called MNet, still called that to this day, which is basically an internal listing platform. And it was a little ahead of its time back then, as it allowed brokers at M&M to M&M, I mean Marcus and Millichap, to cooperate internally and view and access one another's listings is a way to basically expand their market reach by leveraging, you get a listing, leverage it across, I think at that point there were like 700 brokers across the U.S. Now there's maybe 1,500. So that was I think they were a little bit of a trendsetter being on the front edge of technology in that aspect. But as we've now grown into being a little bit more of an open market, where a lot more listings are shared online, i.e. Quantum Listing and Love It Digital, Marcus is still sort of holding the torch on that MNET, which is in a closed market behind their curtain that is really only accessible to their agents.
Interesting. And do you think that social media has had any influence on the way information is shared?
I do. I think that one, it definitely has opened us all, at least I can only speak for myself on this webinar, but, I think we now share things online that you wouldn't have dreamed of talking about. I mean, not necessarily bad things, but how your day's going, showing your connections over LinkedIn, posting on Facebook that you're checking in for a dinner with on a date or with friends. So I think that it has inspired a lot more openness in how we live our lives personally, but also professionally. I think that has had an impact on how people view accepting technology as part of how commercial real estate is evolving rather than fighting it. In that sense, now more people are open to cooperation with brokers outside of their office and outside of their firm. They're posting their listings online. And then I think that carries over into companies like yours and ours, where we are now collaborating. I think that the technology has had a major impact on people being open to strategic partnerships and collaboration with one another, not just on real estate transactions, but in multiple different aspects of business.
Yeah, it's interesting because you and I both come from a brokerage background before we got involved in real estate technology. I think at least brokerage has always been a fairly cooperative business. I mean, there's people who have pocket listings they don't want to share with anybody, but I think that you and I are probably liking that. Half a piece of pie was better than no pie at all, and I was always willing to co-broker a deal with anybody who had the other side of the transaction. Nobody ever did a real estate deal all by themselves. So I think that mindset in the brokerage has really impacted the way that you and I both see technology and its relation to the brokerage business. And
I agree. I think that also another important aspect of sort of an open platform and cooperation attribute is that today things are a lot more transparent. And I mean that in the sense of if you take on a listing, it's the client that you're listing the property for can very easily check, or how are you marketing this? Where is it online? And if you're not promoting it online, rightfully or wrongfully, they're going to look at you and wonder why and think, is it because you're looking to take the whole fee? So I think that there's maybe a little bit of possible shame that can come on a listing broker that does not look to put his or her client's needs in front of his or herself by doing a real open network marketing of that listing.
Yeah, I mean, the brokers say or the buyers say I'm looking for an off-market deal. Uh, I don't understand off-market deals. People make a career out of it, I guess, but um, if once somebody's selling somebody else, it's really on the market. So
Yeah, the whole description's really not accurate itself, is it? Once they're agreeing to explore the market, they're technically on the market, just not being marketed
yeah,
efficiently, I should say.
yeah, and I don't think that ever really serves the seller's interest to not have it properly marketed because competition generally will drive the price up.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I've come across a few of those over the years. Some of them have worked, but I would say more of them haven't, because I think a lot of times the seller's less committed to the deal. Otherwise, it would be fully on market.
I think you're right. Um, so, in your brokerage experience, how do you think that technology has impacted brokerage, other than making listings more readily available?
I think a number of aspects. I mean, I touched on earlier that in '01, cell phones were just phones. We didn't even have really, I don't think text messages were really available back then, or if they were, I don't think I was using them. I mean, now today I have two different cloud sharing features attached to my phone. I can pretty much, I can almost work off my phone as if I'm in the office. I think that's a major change, that access to information and the delivery of that information can be instant from almost pretty much anywhere in the United States or world, if you will, as long as there's cell or Wi-Fi. And I would say that's probably one of the leading changes that I think has had a biggest, one of the larger impacts. Then you have things like crowdfunding, which there's been a little bit of a stumble on that recently, but it's a new product relative to how it functions. I mean, syndications have existed probably since the beginning of time, but with it being done online through crowdfunding portals, it's, ever since Obama rolled out the Jobs Act. But I think that has made a significant evolution to how commercial real estate deals can be funded. I think that's bringing in a major technology change to it as well. It's democratized real estate investments. So now accredited investors could sit at their computer in their pajamas and buy a $20,000 share of an apartment building in Kansas City without really ever doing anything. So I would say that's an interesting second way that technology's impacted, after the number one being mobile. Number three, I think that we're going to see, I don't know how quickly, but over the next few years, I think that there will be some form of Bitcoin or e-tokens moving more into real estate transactions. I think that it's a very interesting concept that has evolved there. The currency, though, if you're following those at all, it's not really that stable. There's been some major climbs and falls over the last couple of years, especially fourth quarter into first quarter this year. I think Bitcoin took a major tumble, and I'm not an advocate of it one way or another as an investment. I'm not saying that, but to be able to move money quickly for a transaction, I think that that's pretty interesting. When you're sending a wire, it's going through a number of different banks. If it's international, it could take days, if not weeks. and this is, seconds to minutes. This money can move from, buyer to seller. So I think that will have some, I think that'll bring some interesting features into how real estate is done in the next, maybe 3 to 6 years. I don't see it really coming on board immediately, just because I think that there's still a fair amount of regulation and things to figure out there.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my brokerage customers the other day. It's just an interesting aside, and in the New York market where I work, the most landlords will charge $3 per square foot for utilities, and this guy is buying a building to convert it into office, and so I asked if he was going to, meter each tenant or do it, $3 a foot, charge him $3 a foot, and he said that he's heard of landlords getting into trouble because some of their tenants are mining Bitcoin in their offices, and Bitcoin apparently takes a tremendous amount of energy to mine. And the landlords are taking a bath on their utility bills because they're spending more than the $3 a foot that's allocated, and always in the past was very protective of the landlord. So it'll be interesting to see if nationwide this becomes a trend where there's more metering or sub-metering of electric because of that. But I digress.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. The amount of power usage is extremely high with that.
So let's get back to our main topic, which is CRE Tech Cooperation. Have you seen a impact on the greater CRE market with the collaboration between CRE tech companies?
Yeah, firsthand. It's funny. We chatted a little bit about brokers cooperating earlier in the call, and when we first, we were probably about a year and a half old, and we were going around calling brokerage firms, telling them about our platform, trying to entice them to sign up. And the more brokers that we spoke with, the more feedback that we got on what else they're seeing in the market, as far as what's similar to us, or, whether direct or indirect competition. And then, it had to be like twice in one day, or twice in 1 week, I should say. Two brokers that were working with us said, listen, why don't you guys call Build Out and figure out how to work with them? And I had heard of Build Out, but I didn't really know much about them. And I reached out to Build Out in Chicago and said, we had a number of friends in common. And I flew out to Chicago and met them for lunch and sort of laid out what we're doing, what they're doing, and how it appeared to me that it made sense for us to cooperate, and wasn't really sure if they were going to feel the same way. And they looked at it and thought, yeah, this makes a ton of sense. And honestly, I was a little surprised at how easy it was to forge that type of partnership with another real estate tech company. Even though we weren't really looking to do the same thing, I thought that they would have been a little bit more standoffish. So, it's been great. We've been working with them for a couple of years now. Then from there, we set up partnerships with Apto. A number of large national and international real estate firms came to us directly and connected to our API, started working with Quantum. And we have a few more groups in the pipeline that we're doing partnerships, syndication partnerships with, like that. And I think that a number of the CRE tech or prop tech companies realize that if you take your own personal feelings out of it and look at what's best for your users and clients, that will ultimately be what's best for your company. If you have to have your vision sort of matching your user and your client base. And, I think when all of us take a step back and realize if we're looking at something from the client or user's perspective, we're making their life easier, it will build a better company for each one of our firms. And, that's sort of what we did. And we've been seeing tremendous growth year over year with our listings, our market reach, our users. And, it was all not baked into our 1.0 version of how our company should function. It was, really just from some feedback from brokers, and we took it to heart and, went to the whiteboard and thought, how could we collaborate and make more sense for everyone? So I see it working. There's going to be companies that don't share that vision or strategy, and to each his or her own. But for us, it works, and I think that it's a way to best serve the clients and users.
I think you're right about that. There's another real listing service that specializes in a particular asset class. I don't want to say which one it is or which asset class because that'll give it away. And I talked to them about doing something like you and I are doing with Quantum Listing and Levitt Digital, and they were so averse to the idea of sharing any information. And I understand it. They want to control it. They want to control the customer. But for me, that doesn't ultimately benefit the end user. And I grew up in a family of retailers that really put their customers first. Stu Leonard's got that giant rock outside his stores here in Connecticut. It says, rule number 1, the customer is always right. Rule number 2, if the customer is wrong, go back and read rule number 1. My dad taught me that it's a lot easier to keep a customer than to get a new one. So, I think you're right. You really do have to respect your customer and try to deliver what is best for them. And I think you have been doing a really incredible job of that. And, I think that's why you and I get along so well, because I think we're really aligned on that there.
I appreciate that, and same to you as well. And one further comment on that is we get a lot out of it. This isn't entirely selfless. We had to take a step back and see, what does the client and the user want? But by collaborating with other companies, we were able to experience growth that I couldn't imagine us achieving had we not collaborated. And not only that, you're forging partnerships with similar companies and similar trenches. You're getting market intel that, that may otherwise not come to you. So there's a lot to be gained over these partnerships with other prop tech and CRE tech companies that I think some groups are missing out on. And I think ultimately it forces users and clients to say, do I want to work with company A or company B, C, D, E, F that are all collaborating? And, to me, it's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you want to be part of a greater network? I don't know. I think it's a win-win for all parties when there's collaboration between CRE tech firms.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of redundant, but yeah, I agree. So you've been doing this for a few years now. What are some of the challenges that you've been facing?
There's a new one every day, but being, I guess, still, a a startup, and I'm doing air quotes, since we're only a few years old. The good thing about challenges is, there's only really a handful of us that have to sort of bounce the idea back and forth to decide how we want to pivot when we come across an obstacle, or realize that there's a better way to do something than how we're doing it. So there hasn't really been any major issues. I think one thing that came up was a few years ago, we really changed on how we process images, due to copyright issues that float around in this industry of, sharing images and data. So that was something that came up, and, we looked at how do we sort of spot check the validity of this and avoid potential issues for us, our users, or, the listing broker, the listing broker's company, news firms, since we syndicate listings to like 500 news sites. We just didn't want to have negligence create issues for a multitude of different parties. So we figured out how to build in some image processing, both software as well as manual tools for us to resolve that. Other challenges are, trying to, I would say a daily challenge is trying to see who you want to be in 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. And as a company, and how that can best match your user base, how that will help you grow the company, both in listing size and traffic and user approvals. So it's, right now we're doing a number of updates, rolling out some new features over the next few months. And it's sort of, you think back to that old analogy that Henry Ford came out with. If you ask the customer what they want, they would have said a faster horse. So a little bit of this is designing solutions before they're really suggested or requested of us. So, there's a little bit of educated guessing on how we want to build things out, or, functions and services that we want to provide that we think will make for a better use for the user base or client base, and what will help them sell more properties, lease more properties, save more time, etc. And that's trying to keep that in the forefront of our mind. We're trying to integrate more tools to best serve that.
I know we didn't talk about this beforehand, but Levitt Digital doesn't charge to post listings on its site, and I know you're a big-hearted person, but you got to make money somehow.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Yeah, we're not running a nonprofit. So yeah, what we've done was, so one of the things that has sort of inspired us to go that route was, prior to forming Levitt Digital, my partner Doug Macy and we developed a company called BevDog, and it was a pretty cool company. What we did was, it was a web and mobile application with restaurant and bar, where restaurant and bars could log in through their app in real time and update specials for food, drink, and entertainment. And then that goes out to all the users. And how the app worked was, it would filter, you could search anywhere in the US, but it was geo based. So it would organize all the specials around you from 20 miles out based on closeness to further out. Then you could search for, say, wings or, cheeseburgers or beer specials, and, it would pull up the restaurants or bars that had those items as specials. And that was really sort of our first, well, Doug had been in tech. I was more real estate prior to that, to BevDog, but that was our first experience on launching a large, I guess, B2C site. And, we experienced a lot of wins and losses on that. We grew that nationally, we made money, but, we never really figured out how to really scale it. And I think part of that was, I thought that since I was a bartender in college, that gave me, bar and restaurant experience, and I didn't really know anyone in that industry. So we really ran our heads into the walls on a number of things. We also were charging the bars and restaurants to promote their specials, but at the same time, we're running around trying to build an audience. So we realized that, half of our growth challenge was our own doing. By charging to get that data in, those specials, we were limiting the amount of data coming. So we decided, basically in the seventh inning of that company, why don't we remove that? And then we integrated like SEO services. We were doing some SEO for the restaurants and bars that worked with us. And while we were in probably eighth, ninth inning of that company, we launched Levitt Digital, and that took off a lot quicker because it's an industry that I had, at the time, 15 plus years in. I had a lot, my connections are in real estate are a lot deeper and tied into a lot more large organizations and associations, and we grew a lot quicker. I understood the industry a lot more intimately. So that was sort of why we decided to roll it out free, is because we saw that would allow our listing base to grow, because, we suffered on our other venture on growing our data. So we decided to do it for free. Now, how do we plan on monetizing it? Well, I guess that's the second part of the question. So we are integrating in, at the moment, a financial arm. We're currently working with StackSource to direct loan requests over to them. And it's going to be that part of our platform we're going to do some fine tuning on over the next few months on how to best serve that solution. And then we are also designing more of a referral system into the listing brokers, where we will do a lot more work in identifying buyers for their assets and bring them to the buyer, and for basically a referral fee, on top of the free listing platform. Our team will roll up its sleeves and help find buyers for assets.
Interesting. I'm sure you.
Yeah. So there's a few different lines of monetization that we view as benefits to the current users of our platform that are listing assets on there, that we view the monetization lines as things that will assist in getting more transactions done and basically building a better community of all of our users.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, obviously, I'm pulling for you there. So monetization is important because it's not a hobby for you. It's not a hobby for me. It's a business, and you got to make money to stay in business. Unlike
yeah, no, yeah, we have a few lines we're excited about, and we'll have those coming out probably over the next 3 to 6 months. We're in the middle of building some things right now, so we're excited about it.
Excellent. What are some of the trends that you see driving CRE Tech going forward?
Well, I mean, we've talked about the collaboration. I think that's going to be implemented into trends because, they're more of a one entry point for data, whether it's for listings, et cetera, going in through one platform and being able to syndicate it out into other platforms. I think that's going to be continue to grow and be more of a demand by users from the firms that they work with, the CRE tech firms. We sort of talked about Bitcoin, but the technology behind that, the blockchain, I think that's going to play a little bit larger role in property records. So that, as far as it has to do with title data, I think we're going to see some changes in how information's recorded going forward. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that I think some of the current technology will evolve. Marketing, information transferring. I feel like I'm talking on the same subject, though. Sorry.
Yeah, no. It's a bad interviewer, not bad interviewee. Don't worry.
No. I feel redundant, and I didn't want to say the same thing over. My apologies.
No. So there is there's one company in our industry which none of us would be here without, probably, but the reason the reason why you and I probably exist is because we were customers of Costar and LoopNet.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any role for them in the emerging commercial real estate picture? Where do you think they're really headed?
Yeah, I do. I mean, you have to sort of pay respects to, whether we agree with some of the things they do or not. Entirely different. They really paved the way in commercial real estate technology and in bringing things online. Before that, I don't know if you remember Black's Guide.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the old actual book that would have listings in the major metros, New York, Chicago, etc. So there's been LoopNet, Costar, then LoopNet, now under one umbrella, really sort of paved the way to an online world for commercial real estate. And they're a large group, and they can sort of go forward how they choose to go forward. I think one of the pros for us, or the newer CRE tech groups that are still evolving, is it's a lot easier for us to collaborate amongst one another, to make quicker decisions, to adapt to feedback that we get from the market. We don't have to go to through a very formal structure, or I shouldn't say don't have to. You probably a less formal structure than a major publicly traded company would have to. So I think it's from a structural component, our size and corporate structure allows us to be a lot more flexible in partnerships, collaboration, taking in feedback from our user base. So I think that will give us a little bit more opportunity to integrate some cooler things, and some will work out, some won't. But I think when you're a certain size of company, being able to sort of play around with integrating in new features or how you function, I think you sort of have lines that you have to color in, and you can't really explore too far out of that. An interesting side note was there was a release on Moody's, with their acquisition of Reese, and that'd be interesting to see how that evolves. I'm not sure if you are reading on that, but that's going to sort of put a little bit of challenge on the comps and the data portion of commercial real estate. So it'd be interesting to see how Moody's evolves with that acquisition of Reese and what they plan to do going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first started using LoopNet, which I used for years before I got Costar, and it was either free or very inexpensive, and the I guess it slowly it built up features, and certainly after the Costar acquisition, prices seemed to jump, which created opportunities, I believe, for companies like yours and mine. Um, and I think one of the nice things about what I'm hearing from you is that you're willing to take risks and invest in new features and new ways of doing business, so that you can see what works, what doesn't work, and what ultimately is beneficial to the customers, because the customers are going to tell us whether or not they like it and whether it's worthwhile for them.
I'll go one further than that. I almost think it would be a risk for us not to do that. I think that we have to constantly be evolving as companies when we're in doing a service within technology. So, providing a commercial real estate service that's based on technology. I think that, through collaboration between our firms and taking in, sometimes good feedback, sometimes bad feedback. Not all the brokerage feedback that we get is good, by the way. I've had some pretty wild suggestions thrown at me where you just sort of roll your eyes and think, okay, well, thanks. But being able to take that in, digest it, do a little homework on it, and see, could this evolve into being a good feature? I think you have to do that. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily willing to, you said taking on more, the risk of doing that. Yeah, I guess there is risk with that, but there's also risk to not doing that. Once you become complacent, I think that's when, the next best thing comes out to show that they will conform to those new demands that the market has. And, they'll build the better product. They'll build the faster product, the more efficient product, or the cheaper product. So it's, I think there's a constant evolution into trying to, build a better mousetrap, if you will.
Yeah, I think you are correct, sir. I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Do you see yourself, doing this forever? Are you looking for an exit? Where do you see this going?
I think that in my opinion, and not for everyone, but I think when you start a company like this, you have to really want to do it. And rolling it out for free, clearly I wanted to do it because, trust me, my wife had some feedback on that. So it's a passion of mine. I enjoy it. Now, that being said, we are going through an expansion now, and we're in the market talking to some venture capital about growth. Now, once you cross that bridge and other capital comes in behind you, you have to sort of put your investors before your own needs. So it's one of those things that if there was an opportunity for an exit that came up, I would have to, bring that up with everyone that's involved and say, here's an opportunity. That being said, it's not something that I have a plan on. It's one of those things that, you have to make the best decision with the best information for everyone on your team. But I wouldn't have gotten into this. I wouldn't have put a lot of my own money into it if it wasn't something that I woke up every day wanting to do. So right now we're just focused on growth. And if there's a knock on the door someday about someone that wanted to, design a merger, a buyout, whatever, we would probably have to sit down and at least take that feedback, see how real it is, and talk with any parties that may come in as investors with us.
Yeah. On your website, I saw that in 2019 you are planning on expanding the number of newspapers, or news sites rather, that you are syndicating listings to, from 500 to 2,000. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so, this was one of those other things that, day one of starting this, we didn't say, I guess to take a step back and maybe explain to some of the listeners, our listing platform is actually a listing distribution platform, and we power all the commercial real estate listings that come into our platform. We then syndicate, if you will, or power commercial real estate listings in 500 news sites, mainly U.S., some international. So we entered into a partnership with a company called Geocentric Media that owns and or manages about 500 news sites. I think there's actually more. That's their business, is buying, building, managing, integrating ads, providing content. So the number fluctuates a little. And through them and a few other groups, we actually had a conversation this morning with a gentleman who we're talking to about possibly coming on board with us to spearhead that expansion into more news sites. We see it as a way of providing, again, for our user base, where we have a little bit different platform than everyone else, where our goal is to get their listings in front of as many viewers as possible over as many different platforms as possible. So, it wasn't in our 1.0 version of what we wanted to build, but, we found a little niche, and we carved it out, and now we're just continuing to grow on that.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant, and I can tell you that when I'm talking to existing and prospective customers, I make sure I always mention our syndication relationship with Levitt Digital and how those listings are getting syndicated out to all those different news websites, so that it's not, the listings aren't just sitting like latkes on our site waiting for somebody to come. We're trying to get those listings out as many places as possible, so that they can be seen anywhere and everywhere. So thank you for that.
And that brings up a valuable thing for us, to partnering with Quantum and other groups. Because what we decided after a little bit was we didn't want to focus on meeting with every listing agent and every broker. We thought we'll focus on the distribution of the listings, and we will try. You can go to our site, enter one listing at a time, or you can go there and manually enter them. You could enter 5,000 one at a time. But we originally were taking, a while back, allowing medium to large size brokerage firms, say over 100. It was really sort of over 200 listings, but they could provide it to us in an Excel sheet. We would upload it. And the problem with that for us was then we'd have to constantly go back to the office or the agent and say, hey, are these all accurate? And we just realized that we can't be every tool in the Swiss Army. We sort of had to find a focus, and we were targeting the distribution into other platforms. So we removed the bulk uploads and said, hey, if you want to directly enter it into us, enter it one at a time, or go through one of the CRMs, or Quantum, Apto, Build Out, etc., to get it to syndicate your listing into us through that. And for us, we felt that avenue we felt that it kept our listings fresher, because people are more likely to edit their listings if they're putting it in through one point of contact, whether it's Build Out, Apto, you being Quantum. They're able to edit, remove, add there, and then those changes track through to us, versus now I have to go into Levitt Digital and make my edits there too. They're going to forget about that stuff, and then we have stale listings, and then a broker calls us 4 months later asking why it's still there, and we say, I don't know, did you put it there? We don't enter it.
Yeah.
So you sort of scratch your head, and it happened enough where we're just like, we're wasting time on this. So we took the bulk option out, and I would say now 99% of our listings are coming through APIs. And, people are still entering them manually, but it's not something that we're running around promoting. We look at it as we're focusing on different parts of the listing, the online marketplace, and trying to integrate more news sites and focus on building out a better tool to integrate our listings into these news sites, and to get bogged down with dealing with every individual broker putting their listings on our platform, would slow our growth on the other side of that equation.
Interesting. We still have people who enter manually, but I would say, probably 85% or more of our listings are coming through some of our syndication partners, like Build Out and Sharp Launch, and it's a beautiful thing. It truly is, because we're able to grow a lot faster, and keep a nice, relatively small team behind that growth. So
I agree. And look, it takes, not to beat a dead horse here, but it takes a lot off of the broker. I mean, you have a busy enough schedule trying to get listings, putting together the marketing package, the cash flow analysis, whatever, setting up showings and managing closings. If you have a few listings going on, the last thing you want to do is log into 8 different websites to edit the same listing. It's one of those things that you just scratch your head and like, guys, is it industry or is CRE tech firms, we can collaborate, make everyone's life easier. It's just, I don't know. I know that we've touched on that a couple times, but the amount of feedback that we got from that early on was just really instrumental in us driving to set up collaborations and strategic partnerships in that front. It has to save them hours out of the week. If you have 10 listings, that probably saves you a good few hours every week just on online edits alone.
Yeah. Well, Brendan, our hour is coming to an end. I have put up on the screen your smiling face with your links to your social media, and as well as your email address. If anybody at home wants to connect with Brendan on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook, here are those links, and his email is here as well. I'm sure he would welcome any communication with you. He's a nice, open, communicative, responsive guy, as you probably have determined for yourself from the time here. And I want to thank you again for all the time you've given us not only today, but in preparation for today. And I'm really looking forward to continuing our collaboration and sharing of information and ideas with you. I find it, something that not only makes me a better real estate technologist, but it gives me a lot of pleasure in general. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And likewise, I always learn when we get on the phone.
Yeah. And I see we just had somebody join us right now. We'll be sending out a recording of the webinar, so don't worry that you missed it. And thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.